All right, we are here. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey,
In the juice.
I know. Welcome. I was just sitting here thinking it has been just about a year that we had this same panel on the juice last year. So hard to believe that it's been a year. Crazy. And so I want to welcome everybody. We've got Kris Mathis, Ariana Waller, and Kendall Hines, and Murphy is over there in the corner running the show. And I'm Laurie Supinski. So thanks for being here. I was in the Start Garden space last week on Friday, and Carlos Sanchez from Ferris walked in. And even though we've seen each other like a fair amount on Zoom, I walked out of the conference room because he walked in the front door and he said to me, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in a year."
Wow.
And it's like, it's true. I mean, it's just, and I feel like I've seen him because we, each other on Zoom, but like in person, haven't seen him in a year. So funny how time flies, and yet sometimes it doesn't. This morning we're going to talk about a couple of things. The topic is podcasting, and all you guys have lots of experience with that, and that's kind of an interesting and important topic, I think, for entrepreneurs in this day and age. But I loved the opportunity to catch up with all of you before the program in the last week, and where you guys are now versus where you were a year ago is incredible. And, while a lot of businesses had a lot of ups and downs throughout the last year, you guys have really have had some inspiring things happen. So I think people will be really interested in those stories, and whether it's that these things that happened for you happened because of the pandemic or just in spite of, or whatever. I'm so excited for where you guys all are. So with that, I think we'll just get into kind of introducing yourself and kind of tell us what this last year has been like, and you guys interact with each other. If you've got questions for each other, just jump in. I want this to be just informal conversation. So I think we'll start out with Kris. I'm just going in the order I see you on my screen.
I am Kris Mathis, business coach for Spring GR. My most popular business is probably Raise a Glass Tours, our wine tour company, and more of a serial entrepreneur. That's kind of my story. Okay.
Well, I want you to go into more detail. I want you to take this time to kind of say, this year, this is kind of what happened.
Got you. Okay. So with the last year, when I think about like my coaching businesses and what we do with Raise a Glass wine tours, we obviously both were shut down in some capacity. Raise a Glass was completely shut down for most of last year. Coaching was obviously moved over to virtual, but even with that, you still got to deal with all the life stuff that everybody is going through as the entrepreneurs that you're serving. So that all played a big factor in going from just being a coach to now being the doctor and the psychiatrist, and wearing all these other hats because you have to support them through the journey and helping them with PPP loans and so on. And so I think that one of the challenges that we had, or that I'll speak for myself personally, I think one of my biggest challenges was, how do I juggle all the different business opportunities and things that I'm involved in? How do I continue to support all the entrepreneurs that I work with and maintain my own sanity for my family in the process of our own dealings of trying to figure all these things out? And so I'm thankful we were able to figure it out. The last year is going extremely well for the most part. I mean, we're still here. Everyone is healthy. So that for me is a win. And as far as business goes, I mean, coaching is all back on track now, which is a plus. So we're doing like a hybrid right now. I do a couple of days in person, then another part of virtual, and Raise the Glass is relaunched as well. And we're actually working on launching some new cities. And so, so it's like we were able to kind of weather the storm and see our way through. A lot of perseverance, a lot of remembering our why of why we do this, and why are we entrepreneurs, and all of those things. A lot of goal setting, a lot of sacrifices. I mean, there's a lot that came with it that I think as an entrepreneur I had to be mindful of and remember. My commitment to what I do and my commitment to my community and those that I serve. and use those things as inspiration and motivation to pull me through to continue to do the good work that we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll get back to you because I want to talk about Raise a Glass Wine Tours and because we had a little conversation this week when we were catching up about how that model for you has changed a little bit. So I'll come back around to that. But next, let's go to Ariana, who is joining us from Florida.
Yes, so I just moved to Florida. I was in Michigan the past 5-6 years, but COVID in the beginning, like totally was just, I mean, it's still bad in different areas and stuff across the country, and for other businesses, but it really hit my business hard because, so what I do is, Wallway Technologies, we support small business owners with tech solutions from web applications, mobile apps, custom software, and more. And so in the beginning of COVID, a lot of people were trying to figure out, how to nickel and dime their rent, like everything. So it definitely impacted us. But then after a few months in, people started to realize, like, okay, if physical spaces are closed, like I need to have a digital community. So my business went for like the first 2.5 months to like going down to making like literally 3 or 4 times revenue from previous years, and even more now, right? Because now my pitch is different. Before COVID, I had to explain the importance of this is why you should have a website. This is why you should have a mobile app. But now people are like, I don't even have to explain the value add. It's just second nature now, which has been a good thing for me. And then outside of Wallway Technologies, I also have my Women in Tech with Ariana podcast, where I just launched season 3, episode 1, 3 weeks ago. And I think episode 4 was yesterday, or 3, whichever one, doesn't matter. It's all on Spotify and all those podcasts, so just go like and subscribe. So I have a lot of experience there, and I'm excited to be here today. So
good. Yeah. Kendall, it's been quite a year for you.
Certainly been a roller coaster for sure. The last 18 months has just been wild, and super blessed, super thankful for, first of all, the big win at the 100 competition. We won that first check, that first 20K. And I spent it, like I knew exactly what I was going to do with the money, went and did advertising. You got to get out of obscurity, right? So that's exactly what we did with that money, and it worked out pretty good. My name's Kendall Hines. I'm the co-founder of Lawnbot. It's an e-commerce solution for the green industry. So we help green industry businesses sell their services online. And it's kind of funny because you can buy everything else online, or you used to, or you can, but people couldn't buy lawn care, and that really pissed me off. So I went and built this own tool for my own business. And turns out a lot of my friends in the industry also have this problem. And now we service 210 companies all using this software across the world. So we're in Canada, in the UK, in the United States. And we're going to continue to just continue to grow. But this year has just been wild. We didn't know what was going to happen. It was like March, like when the world was melting. So to go from that time where there's a lot of uncertainty to, we just kept our heads down and continued to work and win customers and develop the product and develop partnerships. We tried to not let it affect us, even mentally, we tried to not act like it even affected us, even though it did, right? It affected a lot of people. And in September, we got accepted into an accelerator called Conquer through Michigan State. And it's funny, I actually dropped out of Michigan State and then I got accepted into their accelerator. So that was kind of a full circle event, but we were in their accelerator. It's Red Cedar Ventures. And we were on the path. We were like, do we raise money? Do we continue to bootstrap? What do we do? At that time, we had a really deep partnership with a CRM company in the space called Real Green Systems. And through discussions with their team and CEO, they said, what would it look like if we came together? What if we acquired Lawnbot? And we finalized the deal 12/23 of December of last year. And it was a great win for the team, the founders for sure. And then our immediate team, we're up to 9 people now. And it's a Michigan-based software company, so it's a great win for Michigan. And, our whole team comes along with the deal, and they're investing in the product heavily too. So now we have more resources than ever. But it's been a wild ride for sure. It's my first tech company. I don't know, or I didn't know technology before coming into this space. I actually ran a lawn care company, and it's a wild business. Tech is. You can create that much value in a short amount of time. It just speaks to the Ariana's point about people. Everything's going online, so it's not going backwards. We're not going back to the yellow pages. We're not going back to that. It would probably make sense to invest in some digital assets in your business. So,
couldn't agree more.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, because for you, I mean, it was like about a 15-month turnaround.
Yeah,
right?
we incorporated October of 2019. That's when we incorporated.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, 10. It's not overnight at all, because it was 10 years of learning the industry, securing these partnerships. I knew the people at Real Green before I even started growing my lawn care company. So it was kind of formed over 10 years. It just so happened that it was in year 9.5/10 that, it paid off for me. So it paid off for the founders and the product as well.
So actually, let's chat about that for a minute, because Ariana, I know you and Kris can have some input here. So Kendall, you knew the lawn care business. That was your business. You were trying to solve a problem that you experienced, just in your own business, and so, but you didn't have a tech background. So you found a tech founder. You brought on a co-founder, right? You went out and you.
Yeah. Well, initially I built the first MVP using Zapier and Google Sheets and off-the-shelf parts to kind of prove the thesis. And that's actually what I was pitching at. That's what I won the 20 grand on, was just this mock-up and contracts. We had 25 deals secured at that point. I'm the sales and marketing guy, so I just went out and started selling this thing, selling the vision, and people believed in it and put their credit card down and said, yeah, sign me up, even though it wasn't built yet. That was enough fuel to sell Eric on joining me. And Eric's been around the startup game a long time. He knows people that maybe just say things but don't follow through. But he could tell there was something different, I would imagine, that this wasn't just all talk. I guess we actually had real traction. There's people putting money in. I mean, we're generating revenue. So he was looking for that next opportunity. Shout out to Joe Gallagher with 86 Repairs. He had hooked us up. This is one of the magics of Start Garden and being in that space. Eric was like kind of not squatting, but like using 86 Repairs pod. And that him and Joe had a relationship. And after the 20 or the 100 ideas, Paul Moore got me connected with Joe. And Joe's like, Kendall, what can I do for you? And I was like, well, I'm on this path. Like I'm going to these software companies. They're telling me $500,000 to $1 million to build this tool, or go get a technical co-founder. And I think that's where kind of the magic, the God power, whatever you want to call it, brought me and Eric together. And it worked out really well. It wouldn't have been possible without him. So it was, and that's, I guess, if people come to me now with tech ideas and they want to go build this thing, and I say, you need to go validate the idea in the marketplace first, like go sell some. And if the idea is good, they're willing to prepay for it even before it's built. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that kind of traction, don't even waste your time. Like that's one thing to build a product and then maybe they'll come, but you can waste a lot of time and a lot of years like building a product that nobody wants. So that's my experience. I just know sales. Like you got to get revenue. It's the top line in the financial statement. And yeah, super thankful, Eric. Shout out Eric Alberg. We love you.
So Kris, how often, I mean, because I know this happens, to me a lot, is, you meet entrepreneurs and people have a great idea, mm-hmm. And it involves tech. And there is not that ability for them to build that. So that's a common problem and question. And it's like, you could send them to a company where, like Kendall said, it'll charge, it'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars to have somebody build it for you. Or you bring on, you're lucky enough to find a partner or co-founder that can help you. But that is so common to me, and I mean, we even see it with 5x5 night, ideas come in and it's an idea for an app or or something that needs tech. And it's like, in my opinion, that's a huge hurdle to get over. So I love your comments, and Ariana as well.
Yeah, I think a couple of the challenges that I tend to see often in that space, and definitely Kendall and Ariana, feel free to chime in on this as well. But for me, is when people bring app ideas, apps are hard to monetize. First and foremost, they're hard to monetize. Most apps are not money makers. Most apps are free, and they have a very specific thing that they do, which is creating convenience for the consumer. Right. So I get a lot of early entrepreneurs that want to try to figure out how to monetize an app and have no idea what they're in for as far as cost and the phases that are going to have to come to build that thing out. And before you know it, you're up $500,000, $1 million. And so that's one challenge that we run into. I think the second challenge that I tend to see often are the newer entrepreneurs who don't understand the value of partners. Yeah. And so I think Kendall hit it on the head when he said, I'm not in this space, so I had to find someone that could assist me with that skill set because this is my strength over here. And I think Mark Cuban said it best. He said, I'd rather have 80% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. And so for me, that means like I come in with this idea. All I have is this small bottle. This is all I have right here. And I've got to figure out how to turn it into this. Well, I need to understand my strengths and be willing to give up a small piece to bring in the right skill set to help me get that bigger portion. And I think that's something that we all learn through maturing as entrepreneurs and growing and so on. And then you realize what you're really, really good at and what you're not. And you got to find people who have those strengths that are your weaknesses to kind of fill that gap to get you a much bigger piece. Hence Kendall's story.
Yeah, absolutely. Ariana, what?
Yeah, my mind's going wild. I'm just like, I'm trying not to like be clapping and saying amen throughout this. But no, literally that's my personality. But I think Kendall is just a great example. And this is why now, like when people come to me with app ideas, I don't even accept them if you don't even have like projects. I don't even accept app projects unless you previously already have a community. Like Kendall said, he was in this space for some years. Like he had the idea, he went, did his research and developed the MVP. Another thing that COVID helped me realize is that, now I have to figure out as a technologist, how do I pivot my services and my strategy to offer more affordable solutions? So like he talked about how he used Google Sheets and Zapier to build his platform. There are a lot of projects now that I take on where they may originally have an app idea, but I can show them how to save 10, 15 grand using a no-code solution. So we do custom software stuff, but we also do no-code things as well to help, entrepreneurs and founders, get their projects launched a lot quicker. But yeah, I think the number one thing first is you just have to have a community. You already have to have a proven fact of being able to make a sale. Like there's so many people. I know founders now who did accelerator programs 2-3 years ago who like still are in like version 1 of their launch strategy, literally like still trying to figure out how to get someone to pay for their stuff. And in 2018, when I did start Garden 100 Ideas and I won that competition, 20 grand too. One of the first, like I won, and I didn't even have like my product yet. I didn't even have it until about 4 months after I won the money, but I went out, I did customer discovery, I asked questions. I still have that Excel sheet where I talked to like 100 plus people in less than a week to kind of get feedback to figure out. Now I'm also not doing that idea anymore. We could talk about that on another juice conversation. But I understand the value of like going to your customer first. Like you can never talk to your customer too much. You can never you can have too many sales, but that's a whole nother conversation that I'm sure Kris can get into if you're too early. But yeah, I think it's very important for people to do their research. I mean, now it's to the point where I offer a service where people can call me and ask questions just to make sure that their technologist isn't trying to get out on them. Like literally there are people who will pay me for a certain amount of time to like go through like the proposal that they got just to make sure that it's legit, because there are people who will try to scam you. But that's, a whole thing.
I'll add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
And I think that other piece is understanding that you have an idea, but really developing what is the story that you want to sell.
Yeah.
What is the story that you're really selling to people? Because it's one thing to just sell an idea of technology, but when you can tie a story to it on how it's going to help solve the problem, and this is the best solution for it, and you can paint that picture for me, that changes everything. And we did the same thing with Raise the Glass. I mean, I was out talking to people, talking about wine and beer and whiskey and all these different drinks and food and all these things to learn what works, what doesn't work, then bringing it back to the table and then building out that thing. I do have a question though, because Laurie asked us that we interact. So the question that I have is, Raise the Glass is at a phase now where we're not necessarily a tour company. We're more of a marketing technology play. Technology is not my strength. I'm just the visionary, the founder, the marketing guy. Yeah. What as an entrepreneur, and I'm hoping that the viewers can gain something from this as well. Yeah. As an entrepreneur, how do I identify the right tech person to bring into my business to assist me with growing and going forward? Like, what should I be looking for? What should I be asking? What skill sets should this person have to help me at that early phase to move it forward?
Yeah. Oh, I love you putting me on the spot. Yeah, I think, well, number one, of course, I know you're going to ask the portfolio question, right, to see their prior work. I think one of the most important things that you should ask somebody if you're trying to look for a technical founder, you're not a techie, whatever, is have a few conversations with them and be able to make sure that they know how to clearly communicate, like, to you what exactly it is that they'll be doing to implement your project. One of the number one, after recommendations and marketing, the third reason why people come to me is just because I know how to explain to them in plain language what is up. Like, I have people who will literally come to me in quite literally tears because their tech person isn't, fully explaining everything. And a lot of times, sometimes it comes down to they don't know what they're doing. So they're trying to, maybe hire other people for help. And, there's this awkwardness of communication, like, yeah, I've been hosting my website or platform with them, but I haven't talked to them in 6 months. So I think, outside of just them having a phenomenal tech portfolio, you need to make sure that they can clearly explain to you what it will take and what amount of time to implement your project. Because at the end of the day, it just comes down to communication. Because I can build your app for you, or you can hire someone in another country, but if they can't clearly explain, then that's a red flag. I think another thing, what I found is that the best relationships between non-techies and techies also are not necessarily the technologist has to have experience in your industry, but you want them to have some type of years as a business entrepreneur on their own, because I can relate to you as someone who started from the ground up. Right. So it's not to say they have to have 10 years experience, 5 years experience, but you really want to make sure that they can't just talk tech language, but they can also talk business. Because yesterday is a great example. I was on the phone with a woman. She has a cleaning company in Grand Rapids and she wants to develop an app. She has a great idea for an app, and she has a community already that she's worked with for 10 plus years. And one of the first things she said to me was, I love how you're explaining step by step the process of what it would take. So those are the things that I would definitely look at if you're looking for a non-technical person. And then also you can talk to me, hire me as well.
So, like Kendall, when you first started talking with Eric, how much did he really know about your industry?
Like zero.
Right.
So what we did is I would really encourage, in my mind, I'm like, I look back, this product would not have been built at a software consultancy. We would not have a finished product. We would not be where we are today if we went to a consultancy. There's too many, the product has changed way too much from that core vision, from that big vision I had of somebody can sign up online. It goes into the CRM beautifully. We've developed a new measuring technology where the customer colors in the lawn. like that type of magic doesn't happen with change orders and invoices and stuff. That type of magic, Eric and I were sitting back to back in the office. So we both had a vested interest right from the beginning. But I would say, Kris, I would say show them your track record. If you're a proven entrepreneur, you're well capitalized, and the right technical person that you want to bring on this journey, they're going to want equity. Anybody worth bringing on that's good, that's going to get the job done and deliver a product, they're going to need equity, and they should get it, by the way, because if that's where your business is going, then they should definitely get compensated like that. So if they're not asking for equity, then they're probably the wrong tech person, I would say. And on a vesting schedule, of course, Eric and I, he worked for free for 2 months because he wanted to make sure that I was the right horse to bet on. And, I had no problem doing that, giving up a considerable amount of equity in the company. Now, granted, I did have all this revenue early on to say, so it was a little bit less, it was more of a sure thing because it's like we already had all this traction and money coming in and things like that. But that just goes to show you that the company was already valued at, quite a bit when he came in, and to give up that equity, it paid off really well for everybody. But yeah, I would say everybody's interests need to be aligned. But it's tough to find, especially in Grand Rapids. There's not many Erics out there that he's full stack, can do back end, front end. He understands entrepreneurship. He's started his own companies, like Ariana said. But they're out there. I know. Because here's the thing: if you're a good tech person, you have people coming to you all the time with ideas, because they're a dime a dozen, right? And it's like, how do you cut through all those ideas and say, no, dude, I'm already doing $500,000 in revenue. I'm trying to scale it to 5 million. And I don't know what it looks like equity wise, but that's on the table for the right person. That would be interesting. So I think that's compelling to a person in the tech space.
That's a really good point though, Kendall, too, is that, if to make changes, like you and Eric were kind of pivoting and doing things on the fly. And
daily basis, we want to fail fast, right? We want to get to that failure and friction as fast as possible so we can fix it. And then we're way ahead than maybe somebody was sitting on their hands for a month and then decided, okay, we finally found out what's wrong with it. Now we're finally we want to get to that failure as fast as possible so we can fix it. It is stressful at times, especially right now. It seems like every spring, especially in our industry, because we want to keep this startup ethos, right? Move fast and break things. And we really subscribe to that. And it happens when you break things, you got to fix it. So the product gets complex. The product is so complex now. So it's not just fixing this one little, line of code. Now it's like, okay, this impacts this and this impacts this and this, all the servers. And it's just, from a visionary standpoint, I'm like, it sounds so easy to say it and sell the vision, but from a technical standpoint, I have a lot of respect for the back end now.
And like Kris, you kind of changed a little bit from our conversation that we had earlier this week. You're Raise a Glass, you're expanding, but you've also kind of changed the vision a little bit. So, and you kind of, part of it was due to COVID and just maybe the way, customer behavior. And so you have someone that's, you're not going to a company where, like Kendall said, you got to do a change order to make a change. If you've got somebody right there doing it with you,
right,
it's easier to manage those business model changes.
Yep. I was able to, and during COVID, I want to say like the last quarter of the year, we were able to bring on 2 new people. So during that short little stint of reopening, we did really well from September to November. We had a real big spike of, traffic and sales and revenue. And so we were able to use some of that to hire 2 new managers. And so the first one, her name is Natalie. She handles all of our wine, everything on the wine tour side. And we have another gentleman named Matt, who is now building out our new beer experience that we're working on launching here in a few weeks. And so that was 2 things that we did that was different for us. And it really helped me accelerate the process by plugging in 2 more people who could assist me with the growth. And then the other thing, we toyed around with the ideal of virtual experiences, which we did. We did a few of those as well for some company parties where we had 50, 60, 80 people, jump on a virtual experience with us. So that was another unique thing that we did. And then I think one of the biggest things that we did, which I think speaks to what we spoke about, was we really shut down our public experiences. What we noticed is the majority, I'm talking 70, 80% of our business is private experiences, private tours, company parties, private birthdays, private bachelorette parties, and so on. So we've shifted our focus to this private space of just doing private experiences. Oftentimes with our public tours, we would come up short for meeting our minimums for that tour to actually run, especially in the COVID season. And so right now, that's really our primary focus, is really looking at these different private experiences and how we can further grow those out beyond just tours and events and other things that I've kind of, bouncing ideas around.
Mm-hmm.
But being ready to make those pivots, I think a part of it, and I think it speaks to all three of us as well, is, again, being a mature entrepreneur. As you learn and you make mistakes, you learn how, like you said, fail fast, and you learn to make those pivots quickly, rather than being emotionally tied to an idea that you come up with and just consistently dumping more and more money into it, hoping that it's going to work. You got to be ready to just make those moves and know that that comes with the territory. I mean, a friend of mine told me years ago, you put your goals in concrete and your plans in sand, because the plan is going to constantly change every day as you're working to that goal. And I mean, that's just entrepreneurship. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's a life roller coaster, and there's going to be constant shifts and moves all the time. You got to be ready to make those pivots as needed and not be emotionally tied to any one idea. That's especially if it's failing, with the hopes that one day it may work.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, people had no choice but to kind of ride with this year. But that is true. That is true of entrepreneurship in general. You start out with what you think is this brilliant idea, and then it's dictated by market, by customer behavior, by a lot of things. And if you're stuck in that, no, this is what I want to do, and I can't pivot, or I can't change it, I think you are going to be stuck.
And I'll even add one more thing to that. I think with that being stuck, a lot of newer entrepreneurs, they come in and they want the support of a coach or a mentor or whatever the case may be, but they don't want to share their idea, right? They want you to sign an NDA, or they want you to do whatever they may be before they share with you. The reality of it is, whatever you start day one, it won't look that way in 6 months. Right. It's going to look so different a year from that even. So for me, it's like, I'm never worried about sharing anything that I'm working on, because whatever I'm telling you today, I promise you, I guarantee you, it's going to look so much different in 3 to 6 months when I finally get it done. Right. So you're going to hear the mock-up version, but then you're going to get a completely different experience. I mean, Raise the Glass today looks so different than what it was when we launched in 2019. Mm-hmm. It's not even the same experience. I mean, we've evolved and pivoted and changed the way we do things and our locations and so on. So it's like, I'm never worried about anyone, stealing my ideal or, taking my idea. It's not going to, whatever you do, you still got to duplicate what I'm envisioning.
and Kris, you got to execute. I mean, people like we were not the first people to come up with e-commerce for lawn care idea. It has been tried since 2008. It was the wrong team. They had the wrong product. They had the wrong go-to-market strategy, and the wrong amount of effort required. Like, we had to give up so much. Like we like literally all we do is work, even still, like all day, and then put the kids to bed, and then we work from 8 until midnight right now. And I'm bragging, by the way. Like, I'm happy about that. I enjoy doing that because I'm passionate about it. But yeah, you got to execute, and not everybody. So that's why, Kris, I agree. I don't care. Like, I'll tell everybody my ideas that I'm like working on, because there's the amount of effort to start a corporation, to build a team, to go open bank accounts, to trademark the deal, go get your lawyers involved. Like, there's so many steps to win. Nobody just walks into a win.
Yep.
A lot of intentionality behind it. And yeah, man. Yeah. Lots of ideas, but you got to execute. So,
all right. So we're gonna pivot. We're pivoting to podcasting, since that is the topic. And it's funny because I picked that topic because I wanted to talk about that. And then once I talked to each one of you last week, I was like, oh my God, there's so much stuff here with you. And, I hope we get a chance to talk about podcasting. But So Ariana has like you're into season, or do you call it season?
Yeah, season 3. Yeah.
Kendall's done a podcast. Kris had one a while ago, but has more recently been a guest on podcasts. So, a lot of people are doing podcasts now. And it's really an interesting avenue to pursue as an entrepreneur for a variety of reasons. I mean, I think, to me, the biggest thing is to establish your brand and to be able to reach more people, and maybe to create yourself or establish yourself as an authority on whatever it is your topic is. So maybe we could go around and start with Ariana. Like, how did you start, and where are you now?
Yes, I'll keep the transparent, real part of podcasting, because I get that question a lot. So I think podcasting is so important. Like, whether you're somebody who loves social media or not, and the reason why is because we all have ideas, and there are other people who have the same questions as you and want the same answers. So why not you to answer them? So I started, to give context, I started my podcast in 2018. It's called Women in Tech with Ariana, where I interview women from all around the world to talk about their experience, their life as women, moms, technologists, projects, all this cool stuff. Now we've grown to be in 12 different countries with listeners all over the world. We've had Forbes features rated top in Medium articles, and so on and so on. But to kind of give the more how it's benefited me, one, it's an amazing thing to say, right? Like, everyone knows what a podcast is. People love to listen to podcasts. But two, like Laurie was saying, it really helps to get your brand out there. So now I have people who can reach out to me from other countries or other parts of other countries and other parts of the US about my services, right? So one of the first things people always ask me is, how do you make money? Well, in the beginning of your podcast, you might not. So what I used to do for like the first couple episodes, if you go back to like episode 1 in 2018, I would plug myself in the ads. Then super new. And then if there's, of course, questions around like, how do I start a podcast? Number one, I would say, don't overthink it. If you want to there's some podcasts that are, they interview a lot of guests, other podcasts where it's usually just them and a co-host and they're just talking about life. My kind of process of how I go about podcasting is I interview other people, because sometimes it sounds crazy, but I don't like to really hear myself talk a lot. But I've got used to that now. And then some other tangible strategies, just to be very transparent. Like, in the beginning of my podcast, before the brand started to grow, I just recorded on my cell phone. Like, I would get my iPhone, because let me tell you, I don't care what microphone you use. And my producer, I now have a producer, and I'll go into how that happened. But in the beginning, I used the iPhone microphone. If you go to episode 1 through, I think, like 6 or 8, you won't even be able to tell I was recording it in my closet. Like, you wouldn't even know. So don't overthink it. You also don't have to be this person that, any personality is perfect for a podcast, because again, people who are listening to them every day, they're looking for a community of people who are like them. So you match somebody else's personality or what they're looking for. You can answer questions that they have. Now, since the brand has grown, I had to hire a producer, because I just didn't have as much time to make edits and post content and stuff like that. Even though I'm still clearly very heavily involved, and I still create content for the podcast. And then, of course, you can make money like through ads, through just all kinds of sorts of different ways. But yeah, so that's what I've done. And then the app that I use to distribute my podcast is called Anchor, and it's free to use. So if anyone wanted to start a podcast today, you can do recording on there. You can record with other guests on there. You can even do editing on there. So my producer, she has her own software, but she also, sometimes if she needs to make a quick edit on Anchor, and it's anchor.fm. So anchor.fm. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. And then another thing, like, is some people think, oh, this space is so oversaturated because everybody has a podcast. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, I think how you get success over time is just through consistency. At first I started off like every week, but then they got tiring. And I was like, wait, girl, you're an entrepreneur. So now I post episodes when I want. I know that sounds like crazy, but my listeners love it. They don't like go away or anything. So it depends on whatever strategy that works best for you. And then I would also suggest that if you do start a podcast, to do like a certain season of the month and not like every week throughout the year or whatever works for your time schedule. So those are some of the tangible strategies that I've used over the past 3 years.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Kendall, how did you start?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in just being omnipresent in the space that I'm in at the time. So when I ran Lawn Doctor in town, I had Lawn Doctor Live, and I did a web show every week, and I wanted to dominate people, just be hammering Facebook, because when they think of green or lawn or anything, I want them to think of me first. So naturally, I'm gonna take that into the Lawnbot. We did Lawnbot Live, just a little switch there, and we did Lawnbot Live, where we interviewed guests live like this on StreamYard, and then we repurposed that. I actually interviewed current customers and clipped out testimonials that we could use for marketing now. But I do it a little bit different than Ariana. I don't. It was always my goal to get to the audio version of the podcast, but it was much easier for me to press. That's just my personality, is just press stream and go, and then distribute out to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Those were the main channels that we streamed out to. And it helped us just build brand in the marketplace. And I know it helped contribute to sales too. I've dialed back just because post-acquisition, I'm not really in the sales role right now. I'm more in the ops and customer service side of the business for now. But we use it as a communication line to make sure that, we dominate our competition. So we did have some mild competitors, but nobody else, like my like, I'm just going to work harder than everybody else. And that includes ripping a podcast or video cast, I guess you could call it, every Friday. Interviewing different clients or vendors. I had different vendors on that had YouTube followings, try to leverage some of their brand as well. But it gives you an invite into people that you want to meet too. Like if there's somebody high profile that more, hey, you could just call them, have a one-on-one, but how many more people would benefit from the stuff that you guys discussed by just, doing a quick 30-minute StreamYard with them. So I would say, and here's the thing is it's very inexpensive or free. So why not do it? Mm-hmm. All it costs is effort and creativity. And if that's not your jam, like blogs on LinkedIn are still hot too. Like it's just wherever you feel more comfortable, but yeah. That's how I feel about it.
Kris, so for you to be a guest on a podcast, what does that do for you?
Yeah, so my background in this podcasting and all this other stuff, I started over 10 years ago. So like I got into the space before it was like the cool thing to be, right? So, and I shout out to my guy Hanif Russell out of New York. I mean, he brought the idea to me. He had me as a guest on his show. He invited me back and it's like, I would love to have you co-host. And so before we knew it, it was 4 of us co-hosting the show together. And every Monday morning at 9 a.m., we're just having this amazing conversation around business and entrepreneurship. And I leveraged it as a platform to help promote the book that I was writing at the time. And then we released the book, and then that catapulted me to the next level up. And it just went from there. So we did that for a couple of years. And then after that, I mean, everywhere. I've done shows from New York to California now, and gotten followings from all over the world because of these things. I'm currently coaching a guy right now in Canada who is starting a podcast called Get Coach 360. And so it's like my hand is still in this space, although I don't actually host, but I'm playing it from a guest standpoint. And I would say the tips and input that I would give there is, one, be yourself, be you. Don't try to be a personality type or, just be who you are and be as authentic as you can, because the people will appreciate that authenticity and just being transparent about whatever your journey of entrepreneurship has been or whatever that story is. And then understand how to monetize that channel that you're creating. And then have a very strong marketing strategy on how you're going to get this out to people. I think that's the part that we tend to lose on. We just want to just do it, right? It's fun to just get on there and talk, but we don't think about the parts that are challenging, which is actually strategizing what works to get this in front of the right listeners. Those actually can get value out of it and then buy your coaching package for $1,500 or $2,000 or, buy that service that you offer, whatever the case may be. And so that's been a big part of it. So now my lane now is I'm oftentimes a guest on a lot of these shows giving tips around entrepreneurship, or I'm coaching the podcaster who is starting on how to properly go about setting this up and then monetizing it as a business.
Yeah. And so don't you think if you start a podcast, you kind of have to you really have to have sort of a purpose, right? I mean, you can't just go out there and talk about anything. I mean, there should be like a reason behind what you're doing. Are you doing it to grow your brand? Are you doing it to actually make money on the podcast? Are you doing it to network with other people in your industry, gain more customers? There should be a focus.
100% agree. 100%. Yeah. I mean, with the guy I'm currently coaching, I mean, he's made his primary focus all around helping other coaches. That's what the entire podcast is all about. How do we help other coaches get in front of consumers who need that kind of support? And so the goal is we're going to just interview coaches from all these different lanes of different coaching, from entrepreneurship to life, and having them be able to share their stories and use that to then drive traffic in to then connect those coaches and consumers to the support they need. So I agree 100% that, I mean, having, and I would also add in there, understanding your why. Understanding why you have to do this, because oftentimes podcasting is not something that just starts paying a big check out the gate. I mean, you're going to be investing for a little while, your time, and building this out before you build a following that is that trusts you and is believing in what you're doing and is loyal. And that's a process to get there. So there has to be a reason for doing this that's greater than the money. And knowing that the reason why you're doing this is far more important.
Mm-hmm. And Kendall, like for you, you didn't necessarily start the podcast to make money on the podcast, right? It was really all about just putting yourself out there in the industry as somebody that was, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like
I wanted to get attention. So you would not believe how much attention that doing those web shows got me. I would go into the distributors and they say, "Oh, this guy came in and said he saw your Facebook show or whatever." And, haters going to hate, but, right after the hate follows a massive success. So if you don't have haters, go and get some. Yeah, so it worked out really. And I don't know, it's like going to the gym kind of. It feels weird for me not to be doing content right now. I actually just did a webcast yesterday. Real Green does one every day. So I was on that one. So my time allocation has changed a little bit, but I think it's a tool in the tool belt, a tool in the tool chest to use at the right time, unless you're going to build a business around it. It sounds like Ariana has a nice setup now, or she's been able to monetize and maybe eventually, like, it's so funny. I watch these YouTubers where they start talking about a subject and then they do YouTube full time now. Yeah. So it's so interesting how that happens. But what's interesting is so I did an interview with Derek Willis. He played at the Grand Rapids Drive, and then now he's playing pro over in Germany. I interviewed him on Lawn Doctor Live because we had ran into each other downtown. I was like, dude, you got to come on my show. Anyway, if he goes pro, okay, and he kills it in the league, now I have a podcast with Derek Willis. Yes. Like, that's an NFT. That could be like $10 million, okay?
Now, so did he have like an interest in lawn care? How did
No, I was just interviewing like business people that I ran into, like different people. Like, I just hearing about their story. Here was the angle: he was on the Grand Rapids Drive. It was the Lawn Doctor Live was a very Grand Rapids centric show. So I interviewed different business owners around Grand Rapids, learned about their business. I thought he would be an interesting piece, and we did get a lot of viewers, and it's still on YouTube, by the way. So I think that's one other thing that's cool. When I'm like 60 years old, I can look back at all these cool videos and be like, wow, you really did something there, kid. You know?
That actually is a good point. So there's a resource that I used to use a while back called HARO. It's HARO. It stands for Help a Reporter Out. It's a great vehicle to use to post your interview needs of what you're looking for. And then people like me get it in our email, and then we submit our information to be interviewed on those shows. So I think that's one great resource. I think what Kendall says, it speaks to what I was actually thinking was humbly speaking, if you're in this podcast space, you want people like us because we have a following. We have a following, and where we show up, our following show up to see and hear what we're talking about and what new we might share, especially when they're from out of town or out of state or out of country, because they don't have that immediate access to us. Yeah, so this is their way of getting in touch with us, is by checking out everything that we put out and plugging in. So when you get one of us on a show, you're going to see a spike in those numbers for that time being. But your goal is, how do I retain some of those people to continue to watch my show after that person is on? So being mindful of, making sure, I guess it's part of strategy too, but being mindful of what guests you bring on and knowing that that person that you bring on not only adds value through their content, but also adds value with their following and their reputation.
Yeah. Ariana, how do you reach out and get guests? Because you literally you get guests from like all over the world. So I mean, you obviously have a big following now as well. But if there's somebody that, I mean, do you say, oh, I've heard of this person, I know this person, and I just want to reach out to them? Do you just blindly reach out, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I will say I've been grateful. So the first year, most of the first couple episodes, most of it was just me, and then people just started reaching out now. So now I'm at the point where I don't really have to reach out to people. However, for this season, I am doing a lot more of that just because I want a different type of guests who come on my show. Folks who just have bigger audiences, because that's how my podcast has grown. The women who come on my show are phenomenal women in their fields and in their industries and already have communities. So to touch on Kris's point and Kendall's, like that's literally how you grow your podcast. Now I'm starting to reach out to more women who are definitely still founders in business, but who are more on the techie side. So sometimes I have to dig a little bit more for that type of information, because the folks who are those types of creatives, they just spend all day in their rooms. They're not on Instagram and Facebook, so it takes a little bit more time to get them on the show. But yeah, that's how you grow your podcast. And now I can be more selective. So like before, when people would reach out, I'm like, yeah, come on the show, and they were still amazing people. But now I can be more selective because I've had some skin in the game. And so because people are putting in requests to be on the show, I can be like, okay, you know what? Who has the best brand? Who can be the most relatable to my audience? So like, even if a person doesn't say have 10,000 followers or 1,000 followers, maybe they have 500, but their community is really dedicated to them because they're doing something that they're passionate about in the community. So there are different ways that you can go about reaching for people. I think another tip or point that I really want to make to folks who want to start a podcast is make sure that it's a niche, right? So another reason why it's easy for me to, I wouldn't say easy, but it's easy to pitch for sponsorships and stuff like that with my podcast is because it's women in tech. Like that's a niche. It's not just a tech podcast where I'm talking about tech news and stuff. It's a very specific niche where I interview women from all cultures and backgrounds. And so companies, if I'm really, when I pitch to them, I look at it as you need me more than I need you, for real, because I already have, like, I have women who will email me and be like, Ariana, do you know any job positions? So now if I'm going to Microsoft, I can be like, Microsoft, I have like 10 women a month who could be engineers, electrical engineers or whatever, or scientists or whatever. So, how can we make this work? What's going to be the connect? And I'm actually working on something right now with a really big company where they want to figure out how I can be used as a pipeline through my show. So like but that came because of me being niche. Another positive or benefit of being a niche podcast. So whether you're a person who, you're talking about food and travel or whatever, try to make your name fit into something that people often search. So when you go to Women in Tech, if you go to any podcast spot, like anyone, you'll see me pop up. But if you type in Women in Tech, don't even type Ariana, I pop up as like one of the first 3 podcasts. And it's not because I've been, and I think there's another woman, she's been doing her show for like 6 years and I've been doing mine for 3. So, but one of the strategies I used was, and I actually got this from Gary Vee from 3 years ago when I first heard him. He was giving some like podcasting tips and stuff like that. But he talked about using your brand name, making it as similar to one of the most popular hashtags or commonly used hashtags. So that's what and then of course I add with Ariana so people know who I am. But there's so like I could talk about this all day, but there's so many strategies. Yeah. Let's do a part 2 or something.
That's a whole part right there.
Yeah, there's a whole
name thing, man. People just they name their business after their kids, they name it after their own name. It's like no one is searching for those terms, right? No one searches for those things. So it's like, how do you identify the right combination of words that are really popular in search engines that just increases your eyes? Then you buy that domain for $10, and before you know it, it's $1,000 in like a month or 2 because you put together the right combination.
Yes,
that's the kind of strategy that I love talking.
Absolutely,
it's that kind of stuff.
Well, and this happens all the time. When we talk to entrepreneurs, and like you're talking about a niche. There's always a target market,
Yeah.
I mean, you might be, you might have customers from over here and over here, but definitely there is a target market of that you're going after. There's a customer demographic that you should be keying in on.
Yeah.
And you can't be everything to everybody. And so often I think entrepreneurs start out thinking that that's the strategy because they want to, and they'll pitch that way as well. Like they don't realize that, no, it's really important to know who is your market. And that's the same thing with a podcast. You might, people might find you, but you definitely do want to have, a target that you're going for.
I think one of the fastest ways to fail is by targeting everyone.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. You just blast it out like buckshot out of a gun and just hope that you hit the right ones. Good luck. I mean, that's expensive. It's expensive to market that way. And the reality of it is, once you've done that a few times, what you're going to find is 80% of your business comes from this small group in between. Like, this is where all your time should be focused on, is right here, not worrying about all that out there.
Right. And like Kendall, I mean, because you had so much experience in your industry, you are your target market, right?
Yeah.
Your target market.
Yeah. I speak, I mean, you speak their language. We speak our language, I guess. I'm a pretty plain spoken person. I wear Lawnbot t-shirts literally every day of my life still. It's a pretty simple guy. And, this industry, the green industry, is a very, there's multimillionaires that had very conservative, like humble beginnings, right? Where they started with one truck in the garage and they grew to 32. And they have a $5 to $10 million business that's churning 30% profit a year. And, they're doing really well. So, but they still love talking about trucks. They like talking about the details, like what chemicals are you using? What machines are you using? That kind of thing. And I agree with Kris. Yeah, be authentic with who you are and your story. And people love to hear a story. When I was selling for Lawn Doctor, I always pushed the family-owned and operated line. I knew that people in Grand Rapids specifically watched like Wood TV8. They trusted Wood TV8, right? So we went on 8 West, and I knew people would watch that, and I knew if I could get on 8 West and get the distribution channel and get the eyeballs, right, and then get the cosign of the network, basically by having me on, then things would move really quickly. So that was just one tactic we involved. And it was very inexpensive to do that compared to how much return we got on it. But not every market's the same like that. But, it was really, you got to find those wedges where you can get a lot of ROI for like, a low amount of cost. And in that event, it was. And I would recommend any local business, if you have somebody that's good on an interview, like, people watch that still, believe it or not. So
that's good.
Well, we are a little after 11, so I want to go around and wrap up, and I'll put you on the spot and just ask you each to give, I don't know, a piece of advice to entrepreneurs right now who are, who maybe are starting out or who have just weathered the last year and are trying to figure out what their next move is. I think we all feel like we have weathered a storm, and I think we feel like there's, light at the end of the tunnel. And it's been interesting because at Start Garden, even, throughout this entire year, we and you can probably attest to this too, Kris, with Spring GR, we haven't seen a decline in people wanting to start businesses. We've actually seen an uptick, and for a variety of reasons. So give us a parting, shot of wisdom.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you made. I think the point or the wisdom that I would share is you don't have to do this by yourself. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they don't ask for help. I think that we're in a season right now where we're still struggling overall. Like restaurants are still trying to figure out how to bounce back and so on. So this is a time where take a free consultation, reach out to a coach, reach out to any of us or whatever the case may be, get a 15-minute call, bounce some ideas with us on what you could be doing right now to figure this thing out. Because I believe that doing it by yourself is like driving through the city. Doing it with a coach or a support system is driving on the highway. I mean, our experience and knowledges are going to get you there a lot faster than you're going to get there on your own. And the last thing you need right now is to try to figure this thing out in the long haul of who knows how long this COVID thing is going to last. Learn how to step on the gas, get there real quick and get ahead of the curve, and your business will explode on the other side of all this.
Awesome. All right. Ariana.
Yeah. Also, I like to vouch. Kris has been my coach since I started Spring GR and is a phenomenal mentor. So you should definitely, he's amazing. So I have to vouch for him publicly. He's great. And so, I think, like it's for me, what I always have to remind myself, it's never too late to pivot. It's never too late to make your strategy better. Another thing I will say is that even with all this success, there's a tons of failures that you don't hear most people talk about. So if you feel like you're alone or the people around you are just being so successful, they're probably not really being transparent with you about what's going on behind closed doors. Because I know what it's like to suffer alone and not ask for help and not be transparent. So I would definitely vouch with Kris, make sure you're reaching out to people who are more experienced. Talk to me if you have tech questions, ideas, clearly, website right here. So just be encouraged. And remember, today is April 1st. The beginning of a new quarter, re-strategize, refocus. The year is not over and, you still have your business idea and everything. So it's never too late. If you woke up this morning, it's another opportunity to make things better. So be encouraged.
Great. And Kendall.
I think my number one thing behind sales and revenue is the most important thing in your business. At some point you need to deliver the product, but sales and revenue, absolutely, hands down, most important thing. It is the business. It's the top line of the financial statement. The next would be build something that people want. Do people actually want this idea you have? It was a little clunky for me. Like during the accelerator that I was doing, customer, I just knew people wanted this because I wanted it. Right. So I knew if I wanted it, maybe, I don't know. I was like, people were buying it, so they must want it, right? We never really did any customer discovery. We just went. I just went, and but a good way you could validate that is somebody willing to pay you for what you have today, not like what you're going to build. In my case, I was showing the MVP. They're like, if it just does this, I would buy this. And they did. So validate your idea in the marketplace. Make sure people are willing to pay for it. If you can't get even somebody to fill out a contact form on a simple landing page around your idea with a quick video,
in trouble.
I would reassess that a little bit. But also another I want to say is when I came into the startup ecosystem, headlines tend to, for venture capital, people tend to say, oh, this company raised $5 million or $10 million. And that's great. That's awesome. But what you don't see on the other side of that is they have a huge burn rate. So that win that they need to get needs to be so big to return for those. The VCs don't necessarily care if all of their, that's the VC thesis, right? They don't need all of them to win. They just need one to win or two to win, and they win big and do whatever it takes to get there. So what I've been seeing is a lot of founders, and I know some VC-backed founders who are, not so happy they took on the money because they couldn't sell when they wanted to. But they're forced in this position to keep growing their company and raising the next round. And who knows if it's ever going to lead to a liquidity event that's going to change that founder's financial life forever, their family tree forever. So I would say really understand and research what it means to raise money and bootstrap. We had to bootstrap. I talked to every VC in town and they would not invest in us. And Chicago and a lot of places, but it turned out to be our biggest blessing. They didn't, because they wouldn't have let us sell for what we sold for. So really understand that. And I think it's more sexy to bootstrap to $500,000 or $1 million in ARR and own 100% of your company, or maybe you and a co-founder have splitsies on it. But that's a lot of cash flow. You can invest that into other things, just real estate, whatever. Really, really think about that. Not nobody, but before I entered the Star Garden ecosystem, I didn't hear that story much. All I read was in TechCrunch, this company raised $100 million And there's a time and place for that. Like if you're starting an EV startup and you need to manufacture Teslas or whatever, you're gonna need to raise some dough. But like, it's not right for every business. And yeah, just really look into it, because you can use this thing that we call entrepreneurship to like literally change your family tree forever. So
That's great.
That's good.
Well, thank you all for being here this morning. I appreciate you taking the time out, and we could chat forever. So I'll catch up with you all again soon. And Kendall, maybe I'll see you in the space soon.
yeah, we want to get back in there. We want to get back in there. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Guys.
Bye, Ariana.
Bye.